All right, here we are. All right, everybody. Welcome to the last discussion of Song of the Mysteries by Janny Wurts, and this is also the last discussion of the Wars of Light and Shadow, uh, series. This is the 11th book in the series, and we have come through this long journey together here to finish this up and talk about it all along the way. And this is, I say, I feel like I accomplished something. I was telling these guys earlier before we went on, and it is a major accomplishment. And we got our badges here to celebrate with.
Yeah.
So that's great. So with me here today, of course, I have my usual friends, Chris. I got Seven Apocalyptic Fudge, otherwise known as Vasha, and I got Chibi Poe, and I also have special guest P.L. Stewart, author of The Drowned Kingdom, and of course, we got the author herself, Janny Wurts, with us here. So welcome everybody to this stream, and I want to make sure I got my comments on here in case anybody shows up. All right, so I figure we would start off with going over the last three chapters of the book here, and then we'll get into specific stuff about the whole book, and then we'll get into the whole series as a whole and how it all ties up and how everything comes together for the big finale here. And wow, I really just love this stuff here. All right. So chapter 16 was called Discourse, and we had which I didn't really see coming that much, was the kids turning into drakes. Uh that that was like wow. And that was from the change, that was from the interaction with Sescrotial, when he made Alara and Arathon, basically gave them like the same kind of power that the sorcerers have. And what did you guys make of that? That the I forget the kids' names. What were the names?
Asfond and Siantra.
That's fun. Yes, in Sietra. Yes, and that's was the rightful king of Havish, right? If I'm not
No, this one's was Cathdean
Captain.
for Rhine, but it was also their exposure to the centaur, and it was like a culmination of the stuff from the last couple of books with the Adathali, and then exposure to the centaur and everything. So they weren't quite grounded in their flesh and blood, as it were. So when Siantra tagged along with Sescrogial to Alara, and all that, had an effect on her, which I think, and Jenny can correct me, of course, sort of transferred over to Esfand. I wasn't quite clear on how it carried over to him, but that's
their exposure to the high frequency, first at Athalie, then to the centaur, softened the edges of their concept of themselves as human.
Oh, right.
And if you'll recall, Galatas had to separate them because they had melted together. They were one being.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh, right.
And so when Siantra went through the eye of the dragon, she became part of that creation energy, and it altered her. And because they had been so tightly entwined, it reflected off of her back to Esfand. So it really had nothing to do with what happened to Arathon and Alara at all.
Oh, okay.
It happened because she was discorporate and mixing with the dragon's creative stream of thought. And if you recall back to Storm Fortress, the ground was set up for that because that's why Davian was at risk when Sesquartial came to clear the Grimward. And that's why Asandir was at risk if he died there.
Wow. All right.
So, crossing consciousness with a dragon stream of creation is going to alchemically create something different. And it will be real.
Yeah. Thematically, for me, it was really interesting because we obviously been talking about a number of weeks about this kind of somewhat disconnect between Praevians living beside humanity, and then you could do that by extension to say about the dragons as well. And yet here we had kind of 3 chapters before the end, the streams crossing, as you say, that there was kind of these hybrids between them all kind of moving together, which I know we've just got to the end of this book, but it also sets up in classic style a lot of possibilities for other things that could happen then in the future of the world and all of that kind of stuff. It's very much in keeping, I think, with the series as a whole. As I think we talked about this just at the weekend, Jared, of there's so many things happen in these books that have meanings and consequences that take over in your mind. And I think you talked about a PL before we started as well. It's the sort of thing that just keeps on ruminating in your head of like events happen and we don't always see the consequences immediately, but it makes us think and go, but that leads under the possibility of this. And I think even though we ended the story here, it kind of does speak to the future of Athera.
Yeah, because I think for most of us, a lot of us have been waiting to see, because all of the power that was still left over in the Grimwards, right, with the remnants of these Drake dreams, and going back to reading the short stories in Black Bargain, and it just called me right back to everything I've been reading in the previous 10 books, and then also Black Bargain, about just how powerful these dragons and drakes are that can remake reality. And so it was this is the part where it really kind of hit home for me.
Yeah. And it's interesting that the dragons have this power, but they also he also ran into, like Sesquartial also ran into problems trying to manipulate some of this power when he was exposed to the human taint, I guess you could call it, human feelings and stuff like that. So it was interesting how that interaction put a damper on some of his power, but it was still a very, very potent, dangerous thing.
I think you want a series to leave some mysteries.
Sure.
At the end.
Absolutely.
I try to strike a balance between wrapping the threads of the story that you're concerned with and not leaving anything undone, but the projection forward, what isn't answered going forward historically, is immense, and I know what's there.
Yeah, well, it's in the title, mysteries. So that's that's great. I love that, because if everything's answered, then you don't. I think if everything's answered, you lose a bit of a sense of a wonder about the fantastical aspects of the world itself, and so it's a wonderful thing when you have those mysteries left over that you need to think about.
I think we've talked about this in over loads of books and loads of series. Books that have finite endings and are very closed off leave the reader with a problem of, do you like or appreciate that ending because it is so finite? Whereas you can answer some questions, you can answer to some bits, but if there's more left to unravel, then you can sort of have your ending and still project onto the things, the hopes and dreams that you had for the characters, whether they happen just in that moment at the end of the book or going forward. Again, I much prefer the open ending or the obfuscated ending or something like that, because I think in a series that's as long and as detailed as this is, it would feel somewhat it runs the risk of being, it's not quite satisfying in the way that it would want to.
Yeah.
I also feel like it, having not everything not be explained contributes to making it feel like a real world. Like life itself isn't, packaged into easily digestible little bites. So, why should the story be?
Yeah.
Yeah. One of my questions that I haven't figured out. I was going back through my notes for the entire series and up to this book, and it would appear that I didn't catch this, and I missed so much. I'll be the first to say I've missed so much in my reading, but it would seem to appear that there always needs to be 4 dragons in Ethera, and I don't know why yet, and I think I've probably missed that. The answer may be there, but when I was thinking about the dragons part of this podcast, I was like, did I miss that as to why or what the reason is? And I went back and I was trying to do some rereading, and I still don't have the answer to that. But that question, certainly amongst all the other ones I have, again, does not, as you're saying, does not detract for how immensely satisfying this ending was. But as you pointed out, when you're left with questions, not every single question needs to be resolved. I had the same feeling when I read The Cripple God, the last book in the Malazan Book of the Fallen. I had a lot of questions that I went back like, did I miss that? What the answer to this question was? But that didn't mean that the ending wasn't satisfying. And I can certainly say that about this book, that the ending was immensely satisfying. But that was just one of the questions that when I finished, I was like, did I miss that? What? And perhaps it isn't. It hasn't been solved in this volume, but that's okay. It sometimes is nice to be left with some.
Quite a lot hasn't been solved in this volume. One, the big, huge one that's looming that throws a shadow to me over the whole series is, why did the sages in the 7th age need to go back and re-examine this history?
Yes.
That's immense, and someday I may pick up with that.
All right.
I know why, but it wasn't part of this story.
That's a good question, and I think that's going to come up again when we go over the epilogue of this particular.
Nope.
Well,
nope. I left that one dangling on purpose.
Yeah, the question's going to come up. So that was a lot of we had a lot of questions right there just on a couple of kids with some scales. And then we moved on to Dakar, kind of regretting a lot of wasted life that he had. And I kind of really like, what did you guys think about his story arc? I kind of liked where he came about and was doing this reflecting and kind of stood in for the sorcerers for a little while there. I really enjoyed that. I don't know how you guys felt about Dakar as reflecting on his life of getting of avoidance and getting drunk and what have you.
So for me, it kind of makes me a bit sad for my own future because it took him a couple of 100 years to get to that stage, and I'm probably not going to live that long. So, so when he said it was a bit like, no shit, Dakar, you've sort of kind of had an impact on your own life. You've actually decided to do this all the way. No, it's slightly unfair because obviously he's been carrying a sort of disability on the stage, not by his own making, and we find out about an awful lot of that. So he's really been trying to cope with that, and a lot of his choices and things that have went with it have been there. It did make the ending when he goes back to the tower, though, sort of very satisfying. It was like one of those very hurrah moments, of taking ownership of your life in a way that nobody planned out from beforehand, because the whole series, Dakar's kind of told to do, go there, be there with people that he doesn't want or people that he doesn't like and all of that kind of stuff in situations, but he always does his duty. And he always feels sort of a bit put upon, a bit grumbly, but at the end he takes charge of his life, which makes the whole thing come full circle, kind of in a satisfying way,
Yeah, I thought so.
I think with Dakar, I'm sure there was moments where a reader might think, "Wow, this has been the longest apprenticeship ever in the history of sorcery," right? Of course, there are reasons for that, right? Really valid reasons. But I think for me, and I think for a lot of us, perhaps, correct me if I'm wrong, after Warhorse of Mark Ships of Merrier / Ships of Merrier, for a lot of us, our opinion of Dakar changed, right? Based on his actions in those books. And I think that was when he became not just, I'm sure that there were readers that loathed him. I'm sure there were readers that were looking at him more as simply more comic relief. I'm sure there were readers that, were very much questioning this character. But this character was so instrumental in so many key moments in this series that, I think a lot of times, though, as the reader, you might think, oh, well, does he really have agency? But then when you think back, of course he did all along. Of course he had agency. Look at all the things that he did, right? And it was really nice to see that emphasized in the ending of the book for this character, because he's such a lush and richly drawn character. Again, comparisons are not the best, but almost I compare him to Krupi in Malazan, in that kind of character that in some ways very mysterious as well. In some ways, yes, again, he's funny and he makes you laugh, but important, central, weighty, right? And he had his own path, and he took it, and it worked out well, essentially, in the end, despite everything that he went through, largely things that he put himself through. So I found that was very rewarding.
Yeah. And Chibi, you think he's the best character?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think anyone who opens Curse of the Mistwraith, when you're first introduced to him, would see this coming at all.
Oh God, I hope not.
No, I don't think so either.
Where he ends up at, and and then if they make it through, ships and Warhost, which I hope they would, then they'll get their opinion changed. But I don't even think even then that they would see, see where he's going to end up at. He just, I was like, oh wow, he just, clutch win for Dakar.
All right, so with Chibi's declaration below his name there, he preempted a question I'm going to ask later. But anyways, so and also in this chapter we get, of course, Taran dies, and he meets Jarrett kind of in that limbo space there, and they have a conversation. They talk about Arathon a little bit, and they talk about sacrifice, and so I thought that was a very fitting end for Terrans. I thought that was, I didn't like that. That wasn't a death that, like, oh no, how could you kill that person off? It kind of felt like it belonged where it was. Unlike Talith earlier in the series, but so what did you guys think about Taran's ending? Vasha, what about you? We haven't heard from you.
Sorry, I lost my browser for a moment while I was trying to unmute. But yes, the Terrence, I think I really loved his character throughout the 3 books, I think. Yeah, we meet him at the beginning of the previous arc, right? So like with Dakar, I really enjoyed where his character went. I cheered when Jarrett came back through him.
Yeah.
There were some open questions there about what might have happened when Arathon gave Jarrett his additional mage powers. I forget what the technical terms are for the world, but yeah. So I think Taran's ending was interesting for me because I think Jarrett comes back, tells him you did this great job, and I think that sort of the conclusion to the build-up we got through Arathon's um, I guess big speech to the dragons through music or whatever he did, about, humans are not the useless twits that you think we are. So the Paravians are coming to the rescue of the free wilds, like in Taran's defense, or like because of Taran's sacrifice. So that whole arc, I thought that, I guess, the epicness of it all was quite brilliant.
Cool.
He's the constant through the last two arcs, really, because he's there when Arathon doesn't know who Arathon is, and takes him on through there. And he does, his death does continue to trend throughout the whole story of Arathon's companions sacrificing themselves or dying for their, the saving of Athera in some ways. So it sort of does make, again, complete thematic sense with everything else that's going on.
Yep.
And each of the three books also concludes with a note about his family, right? Which we started with. I forget if Initiate's Trial did that, but the last book did. And the previous book did. I think in the last book we got the father returning to the family. Now we got Terrence's children returning to the family. So it also bookended with the family that we started with the previous two arcs.
Yes, that's right.
Love that piece. That was one of the most touching ones, actually, I think.
Yeah.
That whole sequence. Yeah.
I wanted to break the mold a little bit in that too many books treat death as a tragedy. And sometimes it is a transcendent triumph. Sometimes it is a changing of gears. Sometimes it is a stepping into something bigger. And so I wanted that sense of, you're not letting go of a character so much as letting them complete themselves.
Yeah, that's good. That's the better way to put it. That's how I felt with Taran's death. Yeah, I like that.
The arc felt a little bit almost not quite like Fionn, but I think Taran felt like with his arc being completed that way. Being trampled, to death in the end, and the sacrifice, felt as if, almost as if he was worthy to be a Cactian. And of course, with Jarrett being the person to, help him across the veil there, it felt like that. It felt that he was that kind of character, and it felt like because he, he was the only person who didn't have talent that was defending the mysteries that way, right? So normally,
but he was not born to do this. That was the reason why the centaur answered. He was an ordinary guy who stepped up to the mat, and he was not set on track to be that. He chose it voluntarily.
Yeah. But he felt to me like he was that kind of character, that Jarrett kind of character, that person who, that was going to make that sacrifice because he felt it was the right thing to do, was his duty, and there wasn't any regret. So I think that's why we're talking about the fact that, and what Janny mentioned being spot on, obviously, that the death wasn't. It was tragic, but it wasn't a loss. There was a positive that you can be seen there, right? So,
yeah, very cool. There was also a mention of I don't know if you guys noticed, but there was actually a mention of a lot of really cool weapons in this section in the thing, because we, of course, we read a lot about Elithiel, but there was a lot of other really neat weapons mentioned in this chapter, and it was kind of I forget what was the exact context of it, but there was
it when the centaur was coming, like the weapon the centaur was carrying too?
A spear that had blooded the first age, and there was a like it spanned 12 spans in length and stuff like that. And there was like other descriptions of some other weapons in there, and I just thought that was fantastic. I really liked the different sense of history and the different sense of the different magical weapons that were important over the ages. And we know that, of course, Alithiel's the main focus of this age for it's the main sword here. But I really love that mention of all the other ones that the centaurs and the Paravians were bringing with them and stuff. It gives you a sense that there's other ages to be told about here, and other big epic stories in those ages to be told about.
So, Janny, could that be coming?
I think you'll like The Guardian. That's all I'll say. But the important thing is, for the return of the Paravian presence, you don't want to lose the mystery. And
Right.
I know the history of all that stuff. I know exactly what all of those weapons are, but I didn't want to define it here, because you want that sense of grandeur. You want that sense of wonder. You want that sense of there's things that humanity doesn't know and is still beyond reach of memory. So, this book, I brought back a lot of artifacts. I brought back the pearls from Morovair. I brought back Sethvir was sharpening the glass edges on weapons that were used to kill krakens.
Yes, that's
So
right.
there was a lot of little details in here that were just scratching the surface, but it was to keep that sense of mystery alive, because so many questions are being answered in this volume. It would have fallen flat if there was no sense of wonder.
Exactly, yeah, and I think that's
And the sense of breadth of the world. I want that sense that underneath of each of those little mentions is a massive, massive iceberg of legend and history and bygone times and future as well.
yeah, and that's what gives a real sense of I hate to say reality, but it gives a real sense that the world feels real, because that's how real history actually is. You only have the tip of the iceberg. You only have that little bit to go.
Malazan does it with all those successions of ruins, in that sense of
Yeah.
civilizations that have been rubbed away, or the bits that are remaining. I wanted to bring back some of the real living proof and still leave that sense of wonder around the edges, even though I know the origins of all of that stuff.
Yeah.
I left it wide open.
Yeah.
And that was actually one of my favorite parts of these last three books in general, is that very few people knew everything that was going on. And I think for the first kind of like 8 books, you kind of thought, oh, the Fellowship know everything that's going on everywhere all the time. They're sort of in control of the situation. And then as the books kind of develop, we kind of realize that there are other powers that are either pulling the strings or know what's going on to a certain extent. And that kind of pulling back of that, what I would say, assumption from the first lot of books was kind of like, oh, right, okay, there's way more going on here. Like you'd said, I don't know, numerous times, Janny, as it goes, there's way more going on here, but to actually see that play out was in the end very satisfying,
If you ever reread, you'll see the cues. But yeah, I didn't pull the veil off the elder powers till the end here, but they were there all along.
Yep, very much so. All right. Let's see. All right, so we get into the next chapter, 17 here. We have, the sorcerers battling the Drakespawn on the other side of the gates there in the other world. And we have let's see. I'm not sure. I thought, was it Osval Zakrin? Is that the name of the dragon? I had thought he had previously died. So I think I missed something there when
Seamus Sarasog died.
That's who
Osval Zakron was the
was.
successor, and he was not up to the job.
That's right. Okay. That's okay. So I had to get the names right there. So, and we also had Siscrocial kind of attacking the tower there, the Althane Tower, the defender of the tower. And I think later on it got revealed that it was more than just them battling each other. It was kind of a negotiation of sorts. Was I right on that?
They were working together. So how did you feel about that chapter where you saw the Fellowship of Seven pull all their power out full stop? It's the only time you really see it happen.
That's true, yeah. And that's when Dakar had to kind of step in, right? He had to kind of step in, and they kind of forced his hand, really. They said, you got to do this, dude, whether you like it or not.
There's nobody else, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but everybody else is kind of putting everything together. And again, there's just Crucial not in complete control as well at that time, sort of something that you thought was an overpower and, you know, giver of the power to the Fellowship and all that kind of stuff, and at the same stage isn't in control and is not the savior sort of needs dealt with in much the same way as even the Fellowship were thinking they needed to deal with Arathon and Lysair, etc. throughout all the books.
Yeah. I mean, I thought it was cool because there's Dakar was willing to kill Siandra. He was like willing to take the crossbow and kill her. Of course, he got bonked over the head. But then it got revealed that you know, they're not fighting. They're working like you said, they're working together. And there was something about the human emotion just cannot be balanced. And so that's kind of what Secrotio was dealing with. And I thought that was pretty amazing because there was also actually a lot of history revealed in this section too. It was very reminiscent of a lot of the deep history that you get in you know, like the Silmarillion or something like that. And there's a lot of that deep history that was like revealed in here that was still mysterious, and for me it was very interesting.
Yeah, the chain that they put together, I think it was also cool to see them all working together, which I think we've so far seen groups of 2, maybe 3 sorcerers working together at a time. And now we got, 5 of them? Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I really like this that section. And let's see here. There was a further explanation of the directive here that I enjoyed on 741. Said something about the seven owned in strict form the directive to act in Athera's defense, the substance of permission established by repudiation of the accord, the protectorate's sealed terms granted Dragonkind's right to a non-compliant haven on Skaithenduin, provided the exiled drakes abrogated their primal claim to disrupt continuity on Athera. And I like, because that was, I'm sure that was hinted at throughout the whole series, but I appreciated the direct explanation right there of the of that accord right there.
That was always interesting for me as well, because thinking back to what I had known about the accord, that not all the drakes agreed to the accord, and the ones that didn't went through the gate. And you know, the fact that it all comes down to the dragons, essentially, that they ceded Athera and they allowed, you know, this to happen. And that, you know, because I always had the question in my head, well, what if they didn't? Then I guess, you know, they could have essentially reshaped it, you know, because they can bend reality with their dreams. There would have been no Athera. So in my mind through the series, I've always been cognizant of that power and that ability of the drakes, and the fact that if it wasn't for them, basically allowing this to happen, there would be no.
They did reshape the map multiple times. If you looked at the ancient and then the ancient maps and the maps from the eras that came before this era, which is the era of redemption, there were 3 eras prior to this. The map of Athera has been hammered multiple times. Whole
Yep.
continent sank and disappeared, but Cathair got wasted. It's mentioned in this book how many of those huge cuts in the coastline were remains of Drake Wars.
Yes.
So
that's
yeah,
right.
they have altered the face of this planet many times. It only stabilized partially when the Paravians arrived. But you can expect that ages prior to that, the eras prior to that, it was very fluid.
Right. And the what age did the Paravians arrive in? Was
First
it
age
the
era
first
of redemption.
redemption? Okay. Alrighty, and so then finally we get a lot of time going by then in the next news items and before the next chapter we actually get like I think it's like 50 years or 60 years.
150, I think it is. I think it's 150. Yeah.
No, it's like 60 22 to 60 85.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought I looked back and counted.
And
I'm only a maths teacher.
and so that by this time the sorcerers have kind of confirmed that the race Deathseers race are banished, and they confirm that, but we also get the little note that the Black Rose prophecy is as yet unfulfilled, which
Was it?
we knew.
Was it? No, wait a minute. Was it? It depends whose perspective you're looking.
Oh, well, that was
So-
from the sorcerers, wasn't it?
So the sorcerers didn't know that the rose had bloomed at the place. I forget.
They
was
did
it
know.
in Drummond?
They did know
But why did they think it was unfulfilled?
because what they expected was going to happen did not happen as they expected it.
Oh,
Perspective.
because I thought he'd be king of Rathane. Okay.
Right. Yeah, and he wasn't.
That was a different kingship.
Yeah. Oh, it was Alara that mentioned that. Yeah. Okay.
The black rose bloomed when Arathon abdicated, and that totally screwed their plan.
Mm-hmm. Is that? Do you remember that was restated at just that time? If you remember at the start of the book, it was kind of like that restating of the Black Rose prophets.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, in that chapter, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, and so of course later on in the chapter we find out that Arathon accepts the kingship of who was it? What's it called? Arathon's crown king in the finale.
King of Paravia, pretty much, wasn't it?
Yeah, the crown of Paravia.
Yeah.
Which is which I wasn't expecting that.
Well, neither was Arathon.
Good, because I was terrified to figure it out.
Yeah, right. Neither was Arathon. Yeah, I wasn't expecting that at all. I was like, because he didn't want to be the king of Rathane, and he's been refusing it the whole time, and I was like, well, where's he going to be the king of?
It's not a rulership.
Yeah,
It is not a sovereignty.
right.
The Paravian crown is not a sovereign position.
Yeah, it's a different kind of crown. It's not like ruling over a kingdom or something like that. And so that was like, yeah, that was just amazing. That was like wow, and what a way to bring that prophecy full, full circle and stuff.
I, I I thought it was some of the genius. There's so much genius, of course, in Jenny's work, but for me, the genius in that whole part was him taking a different name,
Yes,
right?
yes,
And so it felt, again, as you so highlighted, he'd been denying high kingship, right, all throughout the whole series. And of course, this is not the same as ruling over territory, et cetera, as Jamie says, but the fact that he's almost remade now, right? With accepting the Paravian crown. I thought that was brilliant. And then it just allowed for, I don't want to get into it yet because we'll get there. It just allowed for, shall we say, well, spoilers, what his legacy was, or wasn't, should I say, historically.
yes.
It just allowed for that because that name that he was associated with, was changed.
Yeah.
So.
I also want to just appreciate the artistry of it because that accession to the High Kingship happens under the same sort of the same terms as which he became Master Bard. Because it ties back to Halloran's statement in the Ships of Merior. The office was never given, but claimed, and she tells Marivelia tells him the same thing. And I thought that was so beautiful.
Oh yeah, forgot about
The imagery is just fantastic, and it all just ties back into when Arathon's music first exposed, the veil, the curtain. Jenny gave us a taste of the curtain ripped back, right? And now he's essentially leading the dance of the mysteries, right? So it was just so poetic, and I absolutely loved it.
Yeah,
and of course we've skipped over the fact when they go down into Rockvale and they go searching for the body and they find the stopper, and all of the implications of that, and then obviously the visit to what was that? Ska something, the place where the Skatak, and that kind of in between place where there is given sort of like a choice, so to speak. Again, very. Not like poor Laura has had to make more choices in these books that have actually not directly affected her than anybody else. Maybe even more so than Dakar in some ways, and always seems to have picked the right thing to do, which says an awful lot, I suppose.
Yeah, well, I love the on that note, I love the talk that Traith gave to her when he says, don't waver or fall to the cynic's belief in futility. I thought that was a great line because I thought it really encompassed a lot of the theme of what you put into this book, and like not wavering to that sense of futility, to finding a way to overcome these adversities, and she was at this point trying to find a way to get Arathon back. And so I thought that was just a really important line.
It's an important point because the minute you embrace the cynic's view, you've disallowed your own worth. You've disallowed that you matter. You've disallowed your value. You've essentially given up all your power.
Yeah.
To a belief that shuts out that anything else is worthwhile.
Exactly. Actually,
and yet many people
Davian.
fall for that. And it's not a comfort. It pretty much says you're powerless.
Yeah. It was actually Davian that said that line, which has its own resonance because, of course, Davian went through his whole ordeal of being accused of being a betrayer for how many hundreds of years, and for him to say that line is very apropos, I think.
Well, it makes me really happy to see you guys enjoying the finish. It's scary.
Well, at the end of that part, we have our reunion at last
Mm.
of Alara and Arathon. I mean,
Marathon, yeah.
that was so long in coming. It's just like, when are these two finally gonna?
Well, they even referenced about the last time they really had solid time together, which was like 9 books ago or something, to that effect. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Ellery has to be the most long-suffering character in this series. I mean, what she's gone through, it's just yeah. She did this. She deserved a prize for what she's undergone. So.
Absolutely, I think we as the reader deserved it too. Like this was definitely something that I was waiting for a very long time now, and I was happy to get it.
Yeah, it was very satisfying that part at the end. In fact, I think all of the sequences we go through with these characters, Allura and Arathon getting back together, then we have obviously Daliana and Lysera to come, and then Dakar, Sethfir. They all were very satisfying in their own little ways, because they were all very reflective of the characters that we knew, and the choices that they would make and that kind of stuff. And I do like how they ended up.
Wasn't writing a Mills and Boone.
I was actually the thing that I have to, full disclosure, the thing that I looked forward to most as I got closer to this last book is I want to know how Lysair's arc would end. I want to know if he would survive, if essentially he would be redeemed, so to speak. I that was the one thing that I was waiting for. And of course, Jenny knocked it out of the park again with how she resolved his arc. So kudos to you, Jenny. But that was what I was looking for, because Lysair is still my favorite character. So
I actually had a question about that. The well of extended life thing is no more. That was taken offline, what have you. The so Lysair is alive after he basically lighted out to get rid of the last of the mystery there. How was that possible? Because I think I missed something there.
The crone tossed him into the pit.
Yeah.
As a stripped spirit, so his body was not there.
His body was not there. Okay.
Yeah. So when she gave him
I never
the choice,
said what she did with it. Neither did she.
Yeah. Well, that's what it was. Yeah. We didn't know.
You do very subtly imply it. Once you've read the Arathon and Alara bits, because there's a reference right before she throws his spirit in that he feels like he's wrapped in goat hair or whatever.
Yep,
so,
it was all well laid, but she never made him any promises.
Yeah, similar
she threw him to the wolves.
Yeah,
but
that choice she gave him, I still, because I had wondered at first, okay, what would he have taken necessarily that choice? Exile or essentially passage across the veil, right? Because Lysair throughout this entire series has been someone, of course, because of his biological risk, etc., married to Justice. We all know about Lysair, but I always wondered at the end, because he'd refused absolution, everything that he'd done. I wondered, when it came down to it, was he going to essentially destroy himself? Right? I was wondering how his arc would turn out, but yeah, it was really satisfying to see.
Yeah.
To see the way it did, and to give him that measure of happiness, right?
But contentness, I would say, give him the chance of making that choice for himself. PL, this is my life that I'm going to live now. Yeah,
exactly. It was so well done, but unexpected. So once again, Jenny subverted expectations in the best way.
And I loved Daliana's stance on it as well, where she basically decreed that she had her own life to lead. You know,
Yeah.
in that time, her life wasn't tied to Lysair in the way that it had been kind of through the story to this point, and she could potentially come back and spend time with them, but also it wasn't guaranteed, which I also thought was very true to who Daliana was, very true to the story and the character. Yep, and the lineage.
Yeah, and her love for him wasn't going to make her just hang out with him and dash Neeler, right? She, you know, she was one of those characters where, just like Sophin, you know, it's that courage to be herself, make the choices she was making because she thought it was the right thing to do, but yet not be a puppet, you know, of anyone. I really respected. That was amazing. That was awesome. She was a great character, fantastic character.
Loved it.
Was Lysaea's exile, was that a fellowship requirement, or was that just something the crone did?
The Fellowship disowned him from the compact. So the Fellowship had no more say over his fate. His fate was directly in the hands of the Paravians. So he would have had to face Paravian judgment, which he would have departed the planet.
Mm.
And it wouldn't have been ugly, but they would have banished him to his transcendence, basically.
Yeah, right.
So the crone spared him that. She gave him the choice, stay and face this judgment or go into permanent exile. And you notice that all through the series, Lysair is looking back towards his aspirations from the original world.
That's right.
And so it was a natural choice that he would go back to his beginnings, but as a different person with no power.
You know, it's and that, Janny, I think you hit something that really you know, almost made me weep. Think when I got to this point, when I got read Lysair's fate, in that when we met him, you know, he was essentially on top of the world, right? He's the heir to the throne of the kingdom that he wants. He has looks and riches and charisma and everything going for him. And then essentially, when his half brother, he considers his half brother bastard, comes into his life, it turns everything upside down, right? But when you look back to Curse and all what he's come through all the way to the end, that journey, you know, it's funny, as if you want to say, if he had the choice to almost not wind up in the same place that he was when he started, but essentially to be, it's almost like the destiny that he thought he was going to have was cut short. He goes through everything and he comes back, and I think this is the choice that he would have wanted, probably the best choice that he could have attained, concerning all that he went through. Because I think,
why do people go to high school reunions?
Yeah.
They want to go back there.
Yeah,
Some
exactly.
of us don't, but the rare person doesn't look back to their origins as some kind of heyday.
Yeah.
You know, where you're given a chance to transcend what you were and become larger. How many people still want to look back and step back into a dimension that they know, as opposed to stepping forward into a complete unknown and leaving that past behind, burning it down?
And he also lived his entire life in privilege of some sort or another, you know, from his whole life. And yet we knew from the glimpses that we had of him, even before the curse, that he was never that tied to the privilege, if you know what I mean. He still had a good sense of justice for all people. He still had a good sense of who he was himself. And the curse obviously changed an awful lot that form, because it changed his drive and whatever else. But there were still moments where you could see that part of him come through.
He would have been happier just inheriting Amroth, being a king, you know, living out his life that way. But what I loved about it, it felt almost like Janny gave him almost that second chance to have that quote unquote normal life. Despite all the wrong that he did, we all know the horrible things that Lysair did. But for me, he was such a sympathetic character because, you know, a lot of it wasn't his fault, right? You know, the situation he found himself in, you know, essentially wasn't his fault. So it was just, yeah, it was bringing me to tears to see him get that ending.
The crone scorched his ideal. When she put him down to the bottom rung of society and put him at the bottom rung of in his own warband, she showed him very plainly all of the unjust things that were happening under his nose that he was blind to.
Yeah.
So she scorched that idea. She destroyed the whole concept that he could ever be the just king or justly rule anything, because no one person has that perspective to be able to do that. We're not gods. And so I think I saw that as her. She scorched the ideal and it destroyed the desire to ever again be in a position to rule anyone.
And I think because I've always pitied Lysier, I've always pitied him because of that marriage, his inability to escape his marriage to the idea of justice. I think it was Dakar that told him basically, and I'm paraphrasing him, that he's always going to look for justice, even where there is none. So a character like that, his internally, it was going to be hard for him to be satisfied, but I think that he got as satisfactory an ending as he could have. That's what Janny gave to him, and that made me happy.
It made me happy to see him wallowing around in the muck, but after all the crap he did. That's funny. All right. Yes, and then Arathorn gets the crown, which was awesome. What an awesome scene that was. I just really, really love that. And then we you still give us some little news items here at the end of the final chapter, and I thought that was great because, like we've been saying all along here, there's still some mystery here. There's still there's still history here that's still going to happen, and I just think that's awesome. I love it when any book does that, but to do that after such a long series, I think is wonderful, mainly because the world is so well thought out that it has to be that way, because if it wasn't that way, it would feel false. And so I just I really like how life is going on, and we're going to get to more history. We'll eventually get to another age, and I think that's just great.
Did you pick up that the Paravian Queen Regent never answered Arathon when he appealed to her? He called on her 3 times. He considered he had made a promise, but she never reciprocated. Did you pick that up?
Oh, and what was
It's one of the things that stuck out to me that I was trying to figure out why. And especially when Arathon is the one character that has always had that, even before he knew that it was possible to bring back the Paravians. He spent the better part of the first 3 to 4 novels, 5 novels, trying to bring the Paravians back, to find them, to bring them back. And he's always the one that's had the one human that's had this relationship with them outside of the Fellowship, right? But yeah, I was perplexed, frankly, about that.
Because she did not answer him, because he didn't need it. Because Alara was going to bring the light that brought the unicorn. It was Alara that closed that circle. It was Alara that brought the transcendent energy that sealed that well, or brought the well back up to resonance and enabled the adepts to return. So she never answered him, but he considered and kept a promise that he felt he owed. And that was a signal point. That's why Alara said to the crone, I can't make this choice. He made a promise and he will have to answer for it himself.
Okay.
So yeah, it's just a little bit of a subtlety in there. He was under no obligation to go claim that.
Wow.
The brilliance of Janny's work,
Wow.
right?
And then
Yeah.
and we also get the little the Cirrus.
Yeah.
She's like she crumbles to dust, and now the car is free. He doesn't have to
Yeah.
get
We
those
we,
visions
we sort of
anymore.
speculated in that, didn't we, for
Yeah,
the past couple of
yeah.
discussions? Yeah, yeah. That was again really
So that was
very
cool to
satisfying.
see that
Yeah,
satisfying.
he still gets prophecies, but no more blackouts.
No more blackouts.
That was her mailbox.
So I had a question about that. What was the blackout prophecies are the ones that we definitely know will happen. So who was the crone trying to inform by feeding those to Dakar? Was it the Fellowship?
Yep.
Nice.
That my thinking of that, Johnny, was that again the Bedar and the Cirrus, etc., didn't put themselves in the story way back earlier on, but they had to influence Arathon's outcome to get to that point. That was very much using Dakar in that way to say save him at Warhost, or Vastmark, should I say, that kind of stuff, without actually putting themselves directly there. Is that right?
She was active the whole time, but not in ways that you could
Yeah.
see. And if you notice in this final volume, in her altercations with Saphir, where Saphir tries to claim back Arathon's fate and she will not give it, the bloodline was hers. The bloodline is hers. It remains hers. Even after this book is done, it remains hers. And she said, when Saphir challenged her on free will, she said, that's sacrosanct. She wasn't going to break form. So all of what had to happen in a way that Arathon volunteered. And she forced decisions in very subtle ways. When she threw Lysair's spirit into the well at Rockville, she forced Arathon's hand because she knew he would follow. She knew he would not abandon his brother to the Mistwraith. And she warned Lysair that he was carrying the seed of the Fellowship's destruction with him. And the only way to expose it was to strip away everything else. So it was up to Arathon to solve that problem immediately on the spot. Okay. And not let it happen. So there's an awful lot of things that were delicately laid in place to lead up to this finale and still leave mysteries to be unsolved. But to place all the pieces so that if you went back for a reread, you would find everything was there.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
You just missed it because you were focused on another facet of the conflict that from our human perspective seemed to make more sense.
That makes complete sense.
Yeah. It just keeps ringing in my head, and for me, everything, it's funny. I know for perhaps other readers, everything else goes back to Arathon, but for me, everything else goes back to Lysair.
And Alara, she was part of it. I mean, it's stated right out. Without her, it can't happen.
But the Mistwraith does not corrupt Lysair unless he has that inborn trait of justice, because the solicits can't go against it. They can't. They're bound to not think they can't second guess it, right? So it just brings me back to I think a lot of themes for me, Jenny, that played through your book was, no matter whether a trait is initially a good or positive trait or not, you can't blindly adhere to it. And any blind adherence to any positive trait is still a negative.
Arathon's compassion almost destroyed the whole mix. How many times?
Exactly.
Right.
Every gift, every strength can be an equally powerful flaw.
Exactly.
If you exert it in the wrong time, in the wrong place, you don't want General Patton at the peace table. So the perfect strength of the Cybridian, they had the perfect strength in some, but it also became their downfall.
Yes.
So it's having the wisdom to know that each blade is two-sided.
And having balance. Balance is the key.
But as far as the crone being active all along, look for the first appearance of the desert people in the series and what they're doing. It happens pretty early on.
Yeah, that's cool. It's kind of funny because you've been telling us all along, that if you look here in the beginning, you see it and it's been laid out. And then the last line before the epilogue in this whole book is study long enough under Sethfair and find out. And it's basically the same thing. I thought that was great. I was like, oh, that's Janny telling us right there.
First appearance of one of the Bidar is Ships of Marior, isn't it?
Yep.
I think it's referenced. It's Lysair's chef.
Arathon's.
Is it Arathon's?
Arathon's.
Well, Arathon got one too, but I thought that
he's the cook.
Yeah, Arathon
on
had
the boat.
A cook too, but I thought that on ships.
Lysair never had anything. No, I don't think Lysair ever had any of them protecting him.
Well, I don't know if they were protecting him, but I thought there was the way I thought it was one because he refers to him, the chef, in this sort of the same way that the one on Arathon's boat.
Find me the reference, and I'll tell you if you got something that I missed. But
great. Now I'm going to be looking up Arathon's cook. Okay.
Yeah, when Dakar goes and complains that Talith is sick and she's seasick, and Arathon says straight up, everybody agrees with you except the cook. The cook knows she's eating. So.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
There's a lot of little things.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, there are all kinds of little things planted in there. If you go back, you'll go, oh my gosh, how did I miss that? It's right on the page. It says right up.
I need to lock myself away for about a year and reread,
Yep.
I hope so, because the series is designed for that. Not just once, but 6 times. You'll still see things that you didn't see before. And if I decide to write a far future, which I'm toying with, so far future, practically doesn't bear any relationship to this. It wouldn't spoil this particularly. It would be almost a different story. I'm talking 60,000 years.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. The histories go in both directions far more than you're seeing.
Well, I know Jerry's going to get into the epilogue, so I'll save my question when we get there.
No, don't save them. Just hold on to him.
He's going to get into the epilogue. So.
Yeah, I was going to move on to the epilogue here because I just wanted to point out about this epilogue, and I love how much it mirrored the prologue in the first book, and some of the language mirrored what was said in that prologue, because I reread the prologue and I was holding them like right next to each other. And in the epilogue, you have these lines like layman's writ diverged over divinity, and in the prologue you have if canons are reliable, and I'm like, I like how those relate to each other. And then it has Arathon erased, his the name is erased and he's given another name. And then it's in the prologue you have Arathon unjustly aligned, and so I like how that relates to that aspect. And then it says in the epilogue, recovered accounts equal the same man. And then the prologue asks, is Arathon a saint? And so you have that compare and contrast between both of between the prologue and the epilogue. You have to compare and contrast to those lines that are relating to each other as you go through them. And both of them kind of say, let the reader's perspective discern which distortions alter the framework of truth. And the prologue does that as well. And I just really love how those two things complemented each other so well and said almost the same thing, but in a different way. And I thought that was brilliant.
Boy, I had a test reader really wanted me not to put the epilogue in there.
Really?
Yeah, wanted to take it out. thought it detracted. I thought it had to be there, especially if I go on and define why the sages went back.
Yeah, I thought
Because
it
see, I was looking at a bigger picture still, so I said I'm going to leave it there, even though the person
Wow.
was pretty adamant I should take it out.
I thought it was absolutely necessary. I thought it was beautiful.
So that's nice to hear that
Absolutely.
you guys came down on my
Absolutely.
side.
Absolutely. Jared nailed it. That it brought us right back to the prologue of Curse and
Yeah.
tied everything together. Right? Like that
Yeah.
made, that was I think that was
I mean,
critical. Crucial.
you gotta have that snake eating its tail,
Yeah.
from the prologue to the epilogue. You
Yeah,
gotta.
Ouroboros. Yeah. It's gonna,
And so much of the book is about the way that we judge the characters and that we judge the actions through what we know at the time and how that changes and morphs right throughout the book. So it basically tells this whole story of the reading experience in just that section.
why it was so satisfying for me too is because we all know that Erathon wouldn't have cared whether or not his name disappeared from history, but Lysair would have, right? and that so it was that was doubly satisfying that you gave that ending that Erathon's name is erased from history. However, he's instrumental in the future. Under this new name of how mankind evolves, and everything that he promised. It was, oh my gosh, what Kolchak. He promised that collaboration between the Paravians and humankind would be maintained, and he delivered. But Erathon doesn't care about whether or not his name lives on, right? He doesn't care about that, but Lysair does, and so Lysair is the subject of debate whether or not he's the divine. Everything. The human beings down through the ages talk about Lysair. They don't talk about Erathon, and that's so fitting. It's just, yeah, I loved it.
Awesome, and that's the end.
Scared me to death writing that scene in the pit, because so many threads crossed. The complexity of what went on when Erathon and Lysair were battling that Mistwraith, and the plot that the Mistwraith had to take down the Fellowship for the long haul. All the things that were crossing and calling back to the beginning scenes terrified me that I wouldn't be able to write it with enough clarity for people to get it. So I just tore my brain to shreds to make sure that hopefully I got everything down in a way it can be comprehensible.
Yeah, that's a question I had actually, was how did you balance that need for clarity with the level of subtlety that you wanted, you set out originally with this series. It's very subtle in the way it presents everything and gives it to us, but you still needed to have some sense of clarity as well. You can't have that subtlety being lost in the weeds somewhere. So you need to
No editor.
No editor.
No editor. I did it by just meticulously
awesome.
going over it and over it and over it and referring back to the scenes that it drew on to make sure I didn't put a foot wrong as to what had been laid down before. Because that scene in that moment in the pit leaned on other scenes that occurred way earlier, volumes earlier. It leaned on the original scene in Curse of the Mistwraith when the two brothers get attacked in a famine, heavily leaned on prior material. So knowing where all the stitches were laid and making sure I'd picked them all up in such a way that I guess people get annoyed sometimes because they said, why did I diverge from the main tale? I had to show what happened with enough graphic impact that you remembered it 11 volumes later.
Right.
And so having that foresight writing volume 1, it had to spin out all the way to volume 11 that you could lean back on that scene and remember most of it.
No edit. That's like one of the best answers I ever heard. All right.
I begged, I pleaded, I absolutely begged and pleaded, and I got the editor that was in charge of the series to read the whole thing. And then what'd she do? She moved on. She left the company before the release, so it's like never got the edit. So if there are any mistakes in this book, it's me and me and me, not by choice.
Well, Jenny, I just think that this series, I mean, 30 years, since it was first published. I mean, these 11 books, honestly, they've changed my life.
Oh, that's shocking.
They've changed my life. I didn't, first of all, I didn't think that, it's so funny in my ignorance, I didn't think that I would read a series that, as Chivipo coined, that would be transcendental. I didn't think I was going to find a series that was going to give me, essentially light and shadow balanced and depicted in a way that was going to like touch my soul, kind of thing. Because typically you only get one or the other,
Yeah, but then you've cleaved the universe in half. There is no free will if you eliminate the possibility of everything's opposite. And that's we think that I'm on the side of good. Well, what is good? And good doesn't exist, or a right choice doesn't exist without every other choice being available.
Yeah.
And those choices are going to change. And what do you do when you're trying to write a map for an alternate sequence of evolution on this earth that we live in? We chose a different path. What would happen if the path we chose here through technology was cut off? How would we rise to meet the occasion? What would we become? And so I was playing with some pretty big concepts right from page 1 that I think a lot of readers starting this series are not prepared for, because it's not necessarily a road that classic fantasy literature has tread.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
So more power to you guys for seeing it through, because Arc 4, a lot of people fall off the horse because they're not ready for what I was actually trying to do. And I was just hoping that you would have enough investment in the characters to get through that until you realized the picture is way, way wider and bigger than good versus evil, or the war solving the problem, or killing being the answer, or violence.
Yes, that's very apparent in the use of Elithiel itself, and how it's when you think sword, you think weapon, but it's not. It's
an instrument of change. Yeah,
exactly. And I love that, taking away that trope of the sword just being a weapon was fantastic.
Especially a magic sword, because there's been any amount of magic swords throughout time that will be like a super sword in some way, and yet it is more magical and more transformative than any sword that I can think of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I'd love it if the series could be remembered for that. But we need more people who have finished it. Yeah. It's still a pretty small group of people who have got there. So you're my ambassadors.
That's changing though, Janny. I think, as we talk about more and more, I see people picking up the series more and more. I see people talking about it on social media, and recognizing the greatness, your greatness, and the fact that this is iconic and that needs to be read along with, all the series people say are seminal, like the Malazans and the Wheel of Times and etc. So I think it's a matter of time.
I don't care if my name is attached to it. I just want the concepts to live on.
Yeah.
It's the concepts that are the heart of this.
All right. Awesome. All right. So, Chibipo, we heard from you that Dakar is your favorite character. Why is Dakar your favorite character?
Oh, that's just, I kind of covered that. Just watching his entire growth across the series, from where he starts to, where he ends up. Yeah, I was like, though I was a big fan of Aerith, and yeah, Dakar ends up being. I'm like, oh yeah, no, I didn't see that coming. That's fantastic. I love this guy. So
Yeah, and of course, um, it makes perfect sense to me that Lysaea, only the writer of authoring could have Lysaea as his favorite character. That's a reference to PL's story in Drowned Kingdom.
Without darkness, there can be no light, right? And vice versa.
So that makes perfect sense to me.
Well, it makes perfect sense because Lysair is living by his ego, and so is Othran.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Lysair is someone who, has to overcome his high-born issues, but comes with all of the trappings, the charismatic, male beauty and the presence and the, everything else. But, there's some ugliness underneath. But at the same time, I feel, it's in a way, and I've also felt it's so much more satisfying. Not that Erathon's journey wasn't eminently satisfying. It's so much more satisfying to see a character like that, come to the conclusion that he did. And then I think it's those flawed characters, those deeply flawed characters that really interest and compel me in literature. And Lysair will go down as, my favorite character in fantasy because of how well drawn he was for all those reasons and more.
Yes.
So,
well, you wear your influences on your sleeve, PL. Thankfully. So
we aren't all born with the advantages that Arathon had in his early training.
That's true.
Which was brutal.
Yep, it was.
But we aren't all born with that advantage. So, yeah, Lysair is definitely the more human element.
Yeah.
The more human's perspective.
Yeah. So, Vasha, who is your favorite character and why?
Oh, how do I choose? I think I have categories of favorite characters.
No, that's not what favorite means, Varsha.
No.
Come on, step up.
No, Chris, I won't. Setwi is my favorite fellowship sorcerer. Arathon is my favorite between Arathon and Lysair. Actually, okay, no, I have an answer. Ilera, thank you. I had to work my way there. Ilera is my favorite character. Wasn't to you, Chris. The thank you wasn't to you. But Ilera, I think I think I tend to latch on to a strong female character in general, and Ilera was that, and she had a larger role to play than Arathon in many cases. I like her.
Yeah. All right, Chris.
I mean, it's hard not to say my boy Sulfan at this point.
That's right.
Who I still think is the actual hero of the story. Yeah. Without him, Lysair wouldn't have been able to make his journey. Wouldn't have been able to make it that far and do that kind of stuff. I don't know if he was always the most fascinating character to read. I think that's probably Davian. I think when Davian came into the story, especially how he was introduced, where basically there's somebody waiting in the lobby for you, and we're like, it's Davian, he's here. That was like one of the most exciting moments of the entire story. But I'll go for my boy Sulfan. Like I couldn't at this point change.
Love that choice.
There you go.
I love that choice. He's in my top 5.
Can I change my answer to Davian? See, I can't pick.
Well, no, you can't, because I was just about to say that I agree with Vasha. Ilera was my favorite character because I felt that she overcame almost as much as Lysaea did because of her ties with the Coria thing that she really couldn't get out of. And I thought the way that it was all maneuvered, the way she worked around it, the way the hardships she went through to do that, and then having to wait 200 years while knowing that Arathon's enslaved, basically. That I thought what she overcame was incredible. So that was my favorite character, anyways. Even amongst a lot of favorites, but Janny, who was your favorite character to write?
Some scenes flowed easy and some came hard, but I think when Cardamon and Luhane were having spats, that always came fast.
Yeah, those are fun.
Arathon at his most cantankerous usually wrote pretty easy because he would know exactly the thing to say to piss everybody off. But if you looked at the ethic underneath, it was always there. So, it depends. I had fun writing Sylphan Evans, definitely, and his whole arc. Terrence was pretty easy to write. It depends on who and what. The Fellowship's interaction with the Crone and the Desert People was always interesting because there are very few places in the series where you have a meeting of minds at that level.
Janny, if you don't mind, I do have a question for Jane, though I know we probably all have our own ranking that may change over time. But Janny, is Songs your favorite book of your series?
Each one for a different reason. I'll tell you, the one that tore my heart out was Sidier walking off stage after Storm Fortress, because I knew that was going to be his last appearance. That one sucked. But no, I like them for different reasons. I think the arc finishes are always the powerful moment. If you look at the arcs, the arc finishes are going to be higher on your favorites list for a good reason, because everything led up to them. I'm pretty proud of how Song came out. I knew that as far as my goals going in, I had stuck the landing. Whether it worked for anyone else didn't matter. What I wanted out of the series got in there. So the rest is chaff. So it's very wonderful to see you guys enjoying the final bit and getting out of it what hopefully I put in there. That's very satisfying.
Well, one of the questions that these guys came up with before was what was the biggest change to the plotting that you may have done as you were writing the novels? Because I know you planned.
I had a page and a half outline, single space typed that I started out with, and I stayed pretty damn close to that. That outline was written in 1972. And given that the depth that I was striking for was the map to transcendence for this character, or these various characters, because more than one achieves it, it was always there. It was becoming mature enough in my craft to be able to handle, and mature enough as a person to be able to handle the writing of that to make it believable. It was a lifetime journey.
Yeah.
What changed in the whole writing of it? Nothing really. I didn't depart from what I set out to do at all.
Wow, that's pretty incredible. That's pretty incredible.
Certain things I might not have seen coming, that they would fall into place exactly as they did. But, what became of Esfand and Siantra? If you'd asked me at book run, did I see that coming? No, but it followed along logically. And as far as far future history, it had to be there. So I find often when I go take what I put into the series and I go back in history and I say, how exactly did this happen? There are going to be a lot of things that I did not see the dovetailing of the historical framework that built to a line that's dropped, like Sephir having a scar as long as your arm from a necromancer. How exactly did that happen? In order to answer that question, and I have to build out the entire history at the moment of that change. I have to know where every piece is moving, past, present, future, and how it connects. And so there will be surprises because some areas were not built out. But what is the core thread of what became of that event that's appearing in the series? That core event will have its roots, and the taproot will be spread very broad, but it will be there.
Excellent. Excellent. And so I think that the societal structure that you've developed for this fantasy world is quite unique in all fantasy. Um, how did you go about developing such a society as this that is not doesn't resemble really much else I've ever read about?
This world was not designed for people.
That's right. Yes.
So you start there. Its entire history had no people in it until the first age of transcendence, or the age of redemption.
Right. But
The
even
third age. So people came later. So basically everything stemmed from the fact that you're working with a planet that's a little smaller than Earth, has more axial tilt, so more extreme seasons, more extreme seasonal change within latitude, that has a heavy core, a heavier iron core. So we're driving a bigger magnetic field. We're driving a higher resonance planet. And so if you look at the way reality is constructed on Ethera, and I only go into it starting in Arc 4, people coming to this world will look at a tree and see Earth flora and fauna, because that is the energetic template that their brain is framed to discern. But if you're a Paravian, or you're the crone, or you're a fellowship sorcerer, what are you going to see?
Mm.
It depends on yours. The fellowship is going to force seeing the earth-based perspective, but the earth-based perspective on Ethera does not exist. It is an energetic template that you interact with and you clothe it according to the framework of your mind. And that is actually deconstructed in Arc 4 and again in Arc 5. So the laws of reality don't, how can I say this? They don't contradict what we experience on Earth. It's an illusion. Physics is proven it's an illusion. But how the illusion is constructed is different. And now you're mixing races. So that deconstruction and construction of what do you perceive with your eye, it's entirely tuned to your physical senses. It's entirely tuned to what your brain expects, what you have learned and acquired as you grew. Because other cultures on this planet perceive their realities super different than we do today.
Yeah.
Cultures that had no science, they lived differently. You know, if you read into the Aboriginal cultures and what their dream time was and how they related to, and then you look at their artwork and you look at the paintings that they do and the way they depict people, you realize that their paintings are painted from a perspective that's above the earth plane looking down. Nothing they paint makes sense horizontally. It's all looking down from a vertical perspective. So what did they do when they spoke of their dream time? Their whole culture is constructed on a reality that ours doesn't speak to at all. And so I was trying to replicate some of that on a world that has a higher frequency where literally flesh would incinerate. It would dissolve because the energetic template is not the same as here. So that everything follows from that.
Okay. And so the sorcerer's involvement in titles and clan society all evolves from this basic structure that this planet is built on.
It's not built for human beings. So when the sorcerers designed the compact, they restricted human beings to areas where they could survive without going mad. And then they built the clan system for the people who could survive a higher frequency to defend those areas where human beings couldn't go at all. So the clan system was designed to keep the wilds wild. They were the ones who drew the boundaries. And the High King did not actually rule. The mayors ruled the towns. The High King became the arbitrator between the Paravians and man. And the clan system were the intercedent. So when people strayed off where there was way rights, you can't have a road here. The clans were the ones who were expected to correct that. And if you read the Gallant, you can see that when that system functioned, when a clansman said, you don't belong here, you scram, the people had to do it.
Yeah.
But because the civilization divided itself, the townspeople in the towns couldn't relate to the template by which the clans lived, could not relate to the template by which the High Kings were making their decisions as the liaison between the Paravian presence and mankind. Mankind wants this. High King goes face to face with the Paravians and dies young because of it to negotiate that contract. And if the Paravians say no, the answer is no. So sovereign justice is not feudal on this world.
Yeah.
But I had to start somewhere, so I left that assumption in place for quite a few volumes so that you found out gradually you're not in Kansas anymore.
Yeah, I just find, I don't know about the rest of you, but I just find that so unique amongst any other literature, fantasy or not, that we've come across.
Yeah, Janny was not giving us, a lot of your typical feudal monarchies that we're used to in fantasy. She was giving us something much more evolved, and
even science fiction, even
yes,
it's quite unique. Yeah.
Well, the Sun Eater series tackles some of those concepts in the broad scale projection of the far, far future, where he divides society and says certain aspects we're going to forbid machines, we're going to forbid, and so there were branchings, but it's done with a different scale and a different template and a much broader picture, worlds and worlds and worlds, where I was doing it in a really tight, focused stage. And what would happen to people if they were forced to evolve in a different direction.
Indeed. Earlier, in some of our earlier discussions, you had mentioned some of your artwork on the volumes, and you had mentioned that there were certain things hidden in some of the covers about events and stuff like that. And I was wondering if you could maybe reveal some of these hidden things in your artwork.
Most of the hidden things are not necessarily on the iconic covers, because those had to be pretty straightforward. I mean, what you're looking at in the book you just held up is obviously building the wards around Rockfell in the center of there, and the sword, and the Mistwraith, and the Saerd Lewin as the gargoyles. And if you look at the interlaced knotwork there, it's actually a snake eating its own tail.
Oh, no kidding. Okay.
Yeah, if you look closely.
Wow.
So there's a lot of symbolism, but mostly in the portrait covers. I buried a lot of symbolism in the portrait covers. The X, the two characters are going to come to odds. The one that's reaching for the sword as opposed to the one that's protecting the music. The thorns that are interwoven. So
we were trying to guess, Janny.
Erican, come on. Cat, he just jumped up and tore everything.
Oh, no.
Yeah, half-grown cat. Oops. What happened here? Oh, you brought it. Okay.
I brought the image there.
So you can see the triaxial, the three Paravian races in the triaxial graphic there. The perpetual knots. You can see the Mistwraith, the way it's haloing the two characters. It's centered on Lysair first.
Oh, that's what that is. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, because it used his flaws to get at Arathon. So there's a lot of just stuff that's Lysair's making a fist and he's pounding it into stone. There's all his frustration and his anger right there.
Huh. Wow. Look at that.
So the very pose of the way the characters are featured on the cover.
Amazing.
The unstrung laces in Arathon's sleeves. That's hinting at some of the future things that he's going to go through, where everything gets completely stripped down to all of his ties get broken
That's
or
fascinating.
unstrung. So there's just a lot of stuff in there. The fact that one is looking straight at you and the other one is faced away. One is looking at the whole situation square on and the other one is avoiding.
Nice.
So there's a lot of little stuff
I
like that.
I like how Arathon's grasping the instrument like he's holding on to music, like it's important.
And protecting his heart.
Protecting it. Yeah, that's really cool.
Because of the compassion. He's endlessly wounded by everything because he has endless empathy. He can't contain that. And it's his strength and his flaw.
Wow. I'm sure. Wow, that's
so
incredible.
yeah, all the covers, if you unwind it, there's a lot of things hidden like that.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go back and look at them all again.
Amazing.
I wish I'd have the chance to do portrait covers all the way through. It would be kind of cool to see that. But we're talking special edition territory if it happens and if they give me enough time to even do it, because some of those paintings took 6 weeks. And that's working practically around the clock.
That would be exciting.
Yeah, would indeed.
Well, we just need more readership. That's all we need. 'Cause I'm perfectly happy to see it happen.
I've got a question for you, and it's slightly joking, Johnny. I want to know the real names of all the Fellowship sorcerers. We've got Callum Kincaid, obviously. Is Davian Dave Thomas or Dave Young?
Well, you're going to have to wait for A Thera First Contact, which is a 2-beat novella. The first one shows the Fellowship of Seven, how they became what they became. It starts where they're in flight.
Wow.
And the second
Oh,
one
boy.
is after they've been
Wow.
on Thera through all of the Second Age, and humanity shows the human refugees show up on their
Wow.
doorstep and they feel responsible.
Wow.
Wow.
And it's partly written, but the Guardian jumped in first.
Oh, boy.
You dropped the
So
bomb.
yeah,
on
all
it,
of their
man.
names
Yeah,
are
you-
revealed in that story.
We're like, Jenny, you just like our heads are just spinning now.
I know, it's a matter of they're really hard to write this stuff because it goes back in history so far. I've got to develop everything. I got to build it out even further than I did for Sundering Star. And it's all there, but the build out is equal to building out a Thera practically in the complexity and then working out all the details, because there were more than 7 who were working on that project. What happened to the women?
Oh,
So
right.
there's big, big things that are in the build that you have no clue.
Well, we can't
Oh.
wait for that. Can't
Yeah.
wait for that, Jenny.
Well, it was
Practical.
underway. I have a lot of short fiction that's underway. It's a matter of which one gets finished out first. That's where I use my time when I have insomnia.
Excellent.
This is why I was at the beginning, Jared. This is why I was like, it's the last conversation for now.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I knew that. Yeah, yeah. Absolutely.
Yes.
Well, the short stories could be their own.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah,
because
we
they
could
build
definitely-
out so many things that happen in Arc 4.
Yeah, the short stories were fabulous. So I would love if
Really good.
if those became discussions
Yeah. for sure.
point.
It's a matter of getting the bills paid so I can have the time to do it. It's that simple.
More readers.
There's more future history than you have any idea, but I pointed out to people it doesn't behoove me to write any of it because people would have to have finished the series first to have it be relevant. And that is such a small sprinkling of people.
Yeah.
It could never cover the time. And I don't want to say that I regard these projects as mercenary. I don't. I mean, I could have made far more money doing anything else than all the hours that I took writing this series. It was honestly a losing endeavor. but I have to think about keeping the lights on.
Absolutely.
So, and I need a break too. So sailing the whirlwind is going to get written because I just plain wanted to do something fun. And you'll get a taste of that in the anthology Unbroken that's coming out to help the Aurelians pay their cancer debts.
Oh.
So the Kickstarter for that will be coming up, I guess, at the end of the year.
Okay.
And it'll be published next July. And I took 2 of the main characters from Sailing the Whirlwind and showed how they met. So it's a piece of prehistory to that. And it's fun.
Nice.
It's just fun.
Fabulous. Okay.
So yeah, and the sort of premise behind it is that often the more marginalized the person, the greater the accuracy of the perception. So I'm running around that core concept for that book, but it's a lot more lighthearted and crazy. And so at the moment it's doing the rounds, but if it doesn't sell, then I'll finish it out and do something with it.
Awesome. All right. Any other questions from anybody? I think we covered a lot of stuff here. And Janny, thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you so much for writing such an incredible series. I think this is definitely a highlight of my reading life, and I appreciate everything and all the effort you put into it. It's been amazing.
Thank you guys for being some of the first people out there to actually, in a group, finish the read.
Yeah,
That's awesome. So be my ambassadors, because there's nothing I'd like more than to see this in my time hit its destined audience.
yeah,
We're getting an Arabic translation. That's new.
that's
The
awesome.
next thing you'll see from this universe will be The Guardian.
Yeah.
And that is 240 pages of draft that I've just done the hard edit on, and I still got some refining to do.
Oh,
But there are tie-ins to this series, and the expansion of some of the things that you didn't see in the series are really going to shock you. Shocked me.
that's pretty much a full novel there.
If I combine it with The Gallant, yeah, probably.
Yeah. And I'd also just like to add that this has been about 3 years now. I think we've been reading this.
Yeah.
This series is pretty much the genesis of many of us reading together. This was the very first series that Jared ever joined us for a read along with. How I got to know Varsha, kind of that. So it's kind of bittersweet, and also kind of comes full circle that the kind of journey that we went on with the characters kind of mirrors through the journey that we've been on together.
Well, you can always do the Wars of Light and Shadow reread in 3 more years.
It's always
And
there.
you know, there
more
are other groups out there who are now,
Yeah.
they're just about to schedule for Grand Conspiracy. Drop into the chats for those,
Oh,
because
absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
they're all breaking the ground for the very first time.
Yes, they are. Yes. So, thank you, and thanks to my friends here for having me along on this journey. And
thank you to Steve for page chewing.
Steve.
Steve is a hero.
Yeah, and,
Absolutely.
and all the other friends that were in and out, during the journey as well, and
all enriched. The
Yeah,
experience.
absolutely, and so I think I'm gonna wrap it up and end the stream here. But once again, if you catch this later on, let me know how we did, and talk to you everybody later.
Be well, you guys.
Take care.
Bye bye.